We're in 37A, 4 lines on the bottom of the page. Okay, finishing up the long discussion of the brachas and the klalos, the blessings and the curses that were given on the mountains of Gerizim and Aval. So, Tanur Aboron, every blessing and curse there were several of them, comprised a total of 48. How do you get there? Tanur Aboron, Baruch Bechlal, Baruch Befrat. There was a blessing, a general blessing, and then a specific blessing. So that means that every single topic, for example, one of them was Baruch Hashalayasa Pesel Masecha, somebody who does not create an image of God. So before they gave the specifics, they gave a general one, which was Baruch Asher Loy. One second. Baruch. It would be Baruch Asher Yokim is Divrei Torah Azais. Blessed is the one who fulfills the Torah, and then the specific one was given. Baruch Asher Loyasa Pesel Masecha. Blessed is he who does not make an image of God. Right, and it was true, and then it was true. The same thing for the curse. It would be Ora Asher Lo Yakum is Divrei Torah Azais. Curse is the man who does not fulfill the Torah, and then it would be Ora Asher Yasa Pesel Masecha. Cursed is the man who does create an image of God. And so on and so forth. Each one of the brachas and the collective bracha was repeated for each unit, for each individual bracha and klal. So there was a bracha bechlal and a baruch befrat. There was a blessing for the general rule who fulfills the Torah for each one of the individual curses. And then baruch befrat, there was a specific. This is the problem. The problem is making an image of God. Sleeping with a married woman, etc. And the same thing is true of the curses. Ora Bechlal, there was a general curse, one who does not fulfill Torah, and Ora Befrat, there was a specific curse for any one of the listed items. Okay. Now, with regard to each mitzvah, there are 4 components that are necessary. Lumaid, one is obligated to learn the rules, right? If you don't know the rules, there's no way you can make sure you're staying within boundaries of the obligations. Lulamed is to teach. So in other words, when each one of these blessings and curses, Jewish people accepted their responsibility to teach others, what the rules are. Lishmar is to keep, and lasses is to do. So stay away from the bad and do the goods. Hare arba. That's 4. Arba. There are. So you have 4. You have. On each one of these, there are really 4, right? So let's say to study, you'd have Baruch B'chlal, Baruch B'frat, Ora B'chlal, Ora B'frat. So just the 2 blessings, 2 curses, right? One general, one specific, to teach. 2 blessings, 2 curses, to study, right? Which is a total of 4 commitments to do, 4 commitments to not do, to keep, to be careful. Okay. So now if you have 4 times 4 is 16, right?
Mm-hmm. 4 plus 4 is 8.
So you have 4 in each category. Harishmaina. I'm sorry, I'm saying. Okay. Arba harishmaina. Shmaina. You have 2 groups of 8 here, right? Ushmaina harish sheshesrei. 2 groups of 8 is going to equal 16. Okay, but each one of these commandments were repeated 3 times. V'chein b'Sinai, it was repeated when the Jews received the Torah from Har Sinai. They also accepted the same commitments, the same covenant, bris, at Sinai, and then again, v'chein b'Arav Ismayev, when Moshe Rabbeinu repeated to them on the other side of the Jordan River, they committed to it again, as well as Har Gerizim and Har Avel. So 3 times repetition of 16 commitments is a total of 48. Shenemer Ela Divrei Bris Asher Tziva Hashem es Moshe. These are the words of covenant that Hashem commanded Moshe. Uksiv, and we learn Ushmartim es Divrei Bris Hazais. and you shall keep the words of this covenant. Nimtza memches brisis, al kol mitzvah u'mitzvah. Turns out that for each one of these mitzvahs, there were 48 covenants. Okay. Reb Shimon moitzi harizim ha'revel u'machnetz oyel mayit shebemidbar. Reb Shimon removes harizim ha'revel, and he says there were 48 brises even without harizim ha'revel. Everything that was said at Har Sinai was repeated again at some point in the Mishkan. U'machnetz oyel mayit shebemidbar. The Mishkan that was in the Midbar, there was another set of commitments that the Torah was repeated, and the people accepted the Torah in the Midbar. It's when Moshe Rabbeinu received it again from the Oyel Mayit, from the Mishkan. We plucked at the Hanitanoi, and it's dependent on the debate of this other debate. The Tanya we learn Shmuel Aimer, Kollel never b'Sinai, protest by Oyel Mayit. Shmuel taught that the general rules were given at Har Sinai. Har Sinai was for the generalities. And the protest, the specifics, that was taught by Oyel Mayit. Moshe Rabbeinu received those during the course of the Mishkan's existence, 40 years. Rabbi Kiva says, "Klolis uprotest nemer b'Sinai." Everything was spoken out at Sinai. V'nishnu b'Oyel Mayit, but it was repeated in the Oyel Mayit, throughout the 40 years. V'nishtalshlu b'Aretz Mayim, and it was said over for a third time when Moshe Rabbeinu reviewed the Torah for us in the book of Deuteronomy. For every single mitzvah in the Torah, that has 48 covenants, right? A general and specific blessing and curse. See, right? So that's 4 times 4 is 16 for each mitzvah, and it was repeated 3 times. It's 48. Okay. Reb Shimon Yehudah ish kfar Akko Amar. Reb Shimon Yehudah, the person from Akko, said, Mishum Reb Shimon, in the name of Reb Shimon, ein lecha mitzvah u'mitzvah sheksuva b'Torah. There, for every single mitzvah that's written in the Torah, shalinichrsul of arba mishmei brisis, that has 48 covenants, and each of those covenants comprises the population of the Jewish people. Shel sheish me'as elef, 600,000, v'shleish salafim, and 3,000, v'chamesh me'as, v'chamishim, and 550. 603,550. 1 second. Okay. We'll explain what this means in a second, but for now, what it means is that not only did each person accept responsibility to be careful, to study, to teach, and to actively refrain from certain behavior, they also are obligated to make sure that everybody else follows the same rule. So that's why each one of the brisa, each one of these covenants include every single Jew. Rabbi takes a step further. I'm a Rabbi. L'divrei Shimon Yehudah. Rabbi expands on Shimon Yehudah. He says, according to his opinion, Ish Kvaraka Sha'amar Shimon Ein lecha kol mitzvah u'mitzvah shebetorah. Every single mitzvah of the Torah, we're on 37b, but halfway down the page. Shenichusol of Arbom Ushmeina Brises. First one line is Brises. Shal Sheish Me'es Elef Ushleishes Alofim V'chamesh Me'es V'chamishim. So every single mitzvah has 603,550, and each one of those Nimtzel Kol Echad V'Echad Yisrael Sheish Me'es Elef Ushleishes Alofim V'chamesh Me'es V'chamishim. And each one of those 603,500 has another 603,500. So what exactly is going on? My benayim. What's the explanation here? Rav Misharshi explains as follows: the difference between Rebbe's opinion and Rav Shimon's opinion is arva v'arva d'arva ekebinayu. According to Rav Shimon's opinion, every Jew is responsible. They're an orav. An orav is a guarantor. Today they sometimes referred to as a cosigner. A cosigner isn't exactly an Arav. Cosigner is what you call an Arav Kablan. We'll learn about the difference when we get to about a year and a half, a year or so. Start learning about the difference. An Arav in general pays back only when the debtor is not able to pay. So you have to go through it's like evicting a tenant. It's like a formal process. So in order to get a guarantor to pay, you need to, the debtor has to be declared unable to pay. You have to go through a sort of a legal process, and then the guarantor pays on behalf of the debtor, and now the debtor owes the guarantor. An Arav Kablan, a cosigner, you don't even have to go to the original debtor. You can go straight to the cosigner. He's a cosigner, he's not a guarantor. It's a little bit of a different category. Okay. Anyway, so we're at Arav. First, God has to go, go ask the people to follow the rules, then he can come to us. So we're a guarantor to make sure every Jew follows all the rules. Not only that, according to Rebbe, for Arva d'Arva, not only is every Jew responsible for every other Jew, but every other Jew is responsible that every other Jew enforces the rules of every other Jew. In other words, the fact that you're a guarantor also is every Jew is responsible to make sure every Jew is acting appropriately as a guarantor. Okay.
That sounds like it has all sorts of unpleasant possibilities to it.
Listen, the Jewish people are very known for being, very responsible for each other. When we had our first kid in Israel, so my uncle had been living there for a while. So he explained to me, he says, you should know when you go on the bus, you should expect to get child advice from every random person who's going to offer it to you. He says, you should just know it's the culture. Like, don't be insulted. Just nod your head and say yes and continue doing whatever you want. He's like, don't get too offended. Like, somebody will tell you, it's pride. That's what you have to do.
Everybody's business. Is that what happened?
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. People have all sorts of child advice, especially if kids are crying, So listen, sometimes it's helpful, actually, and, especially you have a complete stranger talking to your kid, they often they stop crying. Anyway, but this is whether for better or for worse, this is the reality. Jews are feel very responsible for one another, and it's it's one of the reasons why we have all these organizations to support each other, and maybe people don't mind their own business enough. That could be an unpleasant consequence. Okay, listen, this is what we were told to do on Har Sinai, so it's obviously something very deep and profound about it. Okay, Dorosh Rav Yehudah bar Nachmani, Turgamani, Rav Shimon ben Lakish. Rav Yehudah bar Nachmani, the translator of Rav Shimon ben Lakish, taught. Now, Turgamani doesn't really mean a translator; it typically means a speaker. So, before the days of public announcement systems, there was someone who was well known for his loud, tenor voice, and he'd be able to speak, and people listened when he spoke. So the rabbi would whisper in his ear, and he would proclaim it loudly.
Yeah, he translates it as disseminator.
Disseminator. Okay, interesting. There's two words often used for this type of person.
Yeah.
Meturgama is one of them, but I think it's called. I think Bala Moire is another word that's often used also. There might be another one as well. Okay, Kol Parsha Kula Lanemro Elavinoyef V'Neyefes. Very interesting. What time is it? Okay, I'm gonna take the detour then. Okay, I said I'm gonna take the detour. Good then. There's a long Rashi here, and I will explain this. I will explain this completely. If there was no time, I would skip it. But Rashi, okay, well, let's just finish here, and then we'll go through each one by one. Okay. Shimon Lakish is very interesting. Every single curse, blessing and curse has to do with a noyef and an ayefes, meaning an act of sexual immorality.
Wow.
Which is very interesting because some of them are clearly the case. Those are the obvious ones, but Rashi will explain the other ones that aren't completely not obvious.
Oh.
So the Gemara gives the first one. Cursed is the man who creates an image of God. Now you're thinking to yourself, what does that have to do with adultery? So the Gemara explains, in other words, this obviously is this guy, if he's making an image of God, is much worse than just a curse. The guy is effectively denying God's existence. He's creating an image of God. He's an idol worshiper. So what does it mean? According to Rish Lakish, it means this is somebody who has an affair with a married woman, and he has a child. That child is a mamzer, and as you might expect, the mamzer is often not treated very well. Right? David HaMelech was thought to be a mamzer when he was younger. He wasn't actually a mamzer. There's a long story. I think I mentioned it a few times in the past, but he certainly was treated as a mamzer, and that's why David HaMelech was sort of, You had the leader of the people. Nobody knew why he was treated this way, but he effectively was banished from his father's house at a very young age. Now, apparently, it wasn't known that David was a mamzer, but it was unknown why his father had banished him, and it was suspected that is what happened. Okay. And so this child who's a known mamzer, is probably not very comfortable about it, and therefore he ends up in idol worship, and he serves idols. His parents are cursed for causing this to happen. Okay, just give me a moment here. Okay, so Rashi explains the following. Okay, the few of them are clearly arayas. For example, somebody who sleeps with his daughter-in-law, somebody who sleeps with his father's wife, somebody who sleeps with his sister. All these are clearly arayas, and according to Rish Lakish, that they'd also be talking about where these people were married. And they're okay. Shaykhim kol behema, someone who sleeps with an animal, is talking about also a married woman, and sleeping with an animal is the fact that she had an affair. In other words, that is the action, that is sort of animalistic behavior. Okay, somebody who curses his father or mother, that's also talking about somebody who has an affair with a married woman, and the reputational damage that he's taken is a curse to his father and mother. So somebody who's a known adulterer is effectively embarrassing his father and his mother. Okay, mashke iver, somebody who causes a blind man to stumble. What does that mean? That's someone who tricks a married woman into having an affair. Hold on. Masig gvul re'ehu. This is somebody who interferes with his friend's business, or he takes some of his friend's property. That would be effectively every single man every single adultery is really such a thing. He's really stealing his friend's property, and he's interfering with his friend's property. He's stealing his business. In other words, he's stealing his friend's wife. Makareu besasar, somebody who hits his friend in secret. His friend doesn't know who hit him. Okay, the reason for this is because an adulterer can cause the woman to have to drink the waters, which effectively will kill her secretly, because the husband will not know who killed her. Okay, somebody who collects a bribe to kill somebody else. I'm just reading along. It will be about 2/3 of the page. First word line, it's of Imai, and we're at Tana Rabbanon, but I'm still going through Rashi here. All this that I've been reading through, all the curses, I'm just reading to you out of Rashi. So Rashi is sort of identifying each of the curses and how they relate to effectively adultery. Okay, there is one of the curses is somebody who accepts a bribe to kill somebody else. So how is that talking about a knife and a efes? In other words, how is that talking about adultery? So Rashi explains. 1 second. Yeah. Okay. This is also similarly where he basically hides his adultery, and again she can end up dying from it, either because of the waters of Sotah, or because if they're caught, she would be liable for capital punishment. Okay, the last one, which is Mata Mishpat Ger Yasser, somebody who twists the judgment of a convert or a orphan. So this, you think, is typically for the judges. How does this refer to adultery? So Rashi says, Eina Yedei L'Darsha. I don't know how to interpret this. So I don't either. If that wasn't obvious. So I don't know. The last one remains a question. Okay, let's continue the Gemara. We're at Tana Rabbanon, about 2/3 of the way down. 2/3 of the way down. V'nesata S, which is the first one in the line. S habracha al hagrizim v'es haklala. Ma Talmud leimer. What are we learning here? Im lalamich hey bracha al hagrizim klal al har eval harei karnemer el yam delevarach es amal hagrizim. Okay. The Torah repeats itself. It says you give the blessings on Hargrizim and the curses on Haravel, which seems kind of superfluous because it already says the bracha will be given on Hargrizim and the curses on Haravel. That the blessings should be before the curses. First a bracha, then a klola. This is how it's printed in the Torah, by the way. All the blessings are before all the curses. A blessing and a curse. There was a blessing and then a curse, a blessing and then a curse. And it isn't the case that all the blessings are before all the curses. And to equate the blessings to the curses. To tell you, just like the curses were with the Levium, the blessings were with the Levium as well. So in other words, Levium on the bottom spoke out the curses, just like the curses were loud, the brachas were spoken out loud as well. Just like the curses were spoken out in the holy tongue in Hebrew. The brachas were also in Lashon HaKodesh. Prat. Just like the curses, there was a general curse. Curse is the man who does not keep the Torah. So too, the blessings were also given as a collective and then a specific. So it would be something like, blessed is the one who keeps the Torah. Blessed is the one who does not twist the judgment of an orphan or a convert. Okay, the congregation would answer Amen. Both obviously both the people on both mountains would answer Amen for each of the brachas and each of the klolos, each of the blessings and each of the curses. Okay, very interesting for today and tomorrow, I think, and maybe we'll even that. Maybe I think it's today and tomorrow, or maybe not. Yeah, no, it is. It's today and tomorrow. We'll be going through the halachas of Berachas Kehanim. What's interesting is that unlike other areas of halacha, these are actually very fairly represented in our current practice. So typically you'll have a lot of Rishonim debating. Over here, the Gemara is actually quite representative of what we practice. Okay, Berachas Kehanim cases. So what do we know about Berachas Kehanim so far? We know it has to be in Hebrew. How exactly does it work? So now there was a difference between the Berachas Kehanim that we have today and the Berachas Kehanim of the Beis HaMikdash, or outside of the Beis HaMikdash at the time the Beis HaMikdash was built.
Just know in a Sephardic Beit Knesset, they'll do it.
Always. That's one of the differences between the Ramah and the Mechaber, Maran, as you call them. Yeah. Okay. So how do you do it? So B'Medina means outside of the Beis HaMikdash. I said shalosh brachas. You have 3 blessings, which is exactly what we do, right? The first blessing is 3 words, the second blessing 5, and the third blessing 7 words, and then you say Amen at the end. Right? Sometimes we say it on Yom Tov. We have a prayer that we say. Sephardim say it every day. They only say the prayer on Yom Tov, the Yehirotz and the Rabbeinu Shalom. Okay. Ubemikdash, but in the Beis HaMikdash, you did not answer Amen in the Mikdash. You said the full Baruch Shem. Therefore, bracha achas, they would make one long blessing, and they would not interrupt. In the Beis HaMikdash, they would say God's name as it is actually written. So you'd say the Yud Kei Vav Kei, what do you call it? The Tetragrammaton. The Tetragrammaton as it's pronounced, and what is the pronunciation Tetragrammaton? Well, of course, there's 14 different ways to pronounce it. So there's many different ways to pronounce it. Typical is outside the Beis HaMikdash, you don't pronounce Yud Kei Vav Kei, you pronounce Aleph Dal Nun Yod, Ado Hashem, which is exactly how we pronounce it today. B'Medina Kehanim Noisis Yedayim Keneged Kisfeim. Outside of the temple, the Kehanim hold up their hands up until their shoulders. However, in the Beis HaMikdash, Al Gabe Roshem, they would hold it above their heads. Chutz mi Kohen Gadol, the exception of Kohen Gadol, She'enim Agbias Yadav L'Malam Menatzitz. The Kohen Gadol had a plate that he wore roughly on his forehead, at about the same place where we wear our tefillin. Let's look at the hairline roughly, and the Kohen Gadol was not allowed to lift his hands above the tzitz, this plate. Rabbi Yehudah, sorry,
And what was written on that plate?
Kodesh Lashem. So that would be holy to God. Now it's interesting. There is room for two. The Gemara teaches there's room for two sets of tefillin. In other words, the king was able to wear a crown and tefillin, and the kohen was able to wear tzitz and a single pair of tefillin. Okay, and he wouldn't wear tefillin during the avodah; he would wear it right outside, while he would wear tzitz as well. Okay. Rabbi Yehudah Omer, Af Kohen Gadol Magbi Yadav L'Malam Al Tzitz Shenemar V'Yisa Aaron Yadav L'Om V'Yivarchem. Rabbi Yehudah says the Kohen Gadol also was able to lift his hands above his tzitz, above the tzitz. And this is an exception, even though typically he's not allowed to. This is an exception, and he would lift his hands above. He would lift them up high, as the verse states. Aaron lifted his hands and he blessed the congregation. So now the Gemara goes through a bunch of different items of halacha that we, much of which we follow today. Tana Rabbanan, Kai Sevarchu. This is how you should bench them. This is how the bracha is performed. B'loshen HaKodesh in Hebrew. At the Omer b'loshen HaKodesh, you're telling me it's in Hebrew, or maybe it's in any language. Nemer kan Kai Sevarchu. It says by Berachas Kehanim, this is how you give them a blessing. V'nemer lahalan ela yamdu levorach hasam. And it says by the blessings and the curses on Hagrizim and Arefel, it says the word blessing, Yivarach, blessing. And therefore we compare the Birchas Kehanim, the blessing of the Kehanim, to the blessing of the Levium during that event. Malahalam B'loshen Kodesh, Afkan B'loshen Kodesh. Just like by Hagrizim and Arefel was in Hebrew, so too Birchas Kehanim is in Hebrew as well. Rabbi Yehudah says, Ein et tzarach, there's no need to equate the two categories. Harayu Omer Kai. It says, Kai, this is how it said, using these exact words, which are the words printed in the Torah, which is exactly how we make the blessing today. Tanya Idach, another brisa. Kai Sevarchu, this is how you bless them, Ba'amida, standing. The Kayan has to be standing. Ata Omer Ba'amida, Ein Elafi Levi Yeshiva. How do you know that? From the fact that it says this is how you bless them. Maybe they could sit down. Nemer Kan Kai Sevarchu. It says over here, this is how you bless them. Nemer Lahalan, and it says elsewhere, Ela Yamdu Levorach. When the Levium gave the blessings and the curses on Hagrizim and Arefel, it says they stood. Malahalan Ba'amida, Afkan Ba'amida, just like the blessings and curses of Hagrizim and Arefel were said standing. Birchas Kehanim, the Kohen, it needs to be standing as well. Rav Nosson says, Ein etzarach, it's not necessary. Harei Omer l'sharsei u'levorach b'shmai. It speaks of Aaron HaKohen as serving God, l'sharsei to serve him, u'levorach b'shmai, and to give the blessing. The Birchas Kehanim. Ma misharis ba'amida, just like when the Kohen serves God, he serves God standing when he performs the sacrificial service in the Beis HaMikdash, in the temple. Af mevarach, the blessing ba'amida, the Birchas Kehanim is also spoken standing. Umisharis gufei minol, and how do you know that a Kohen who's in the middle of performing a service needs to be standing? The siv la'amod l'sharis. It says you have to stand to serve. So therefore, we know that Birchas Kehanim has to be said standing. Tanya Idach, another brisa says, Kaisavarchu, this is how you bless them, Benesias kapayim, with hands raised up. And this is sometimes two words are used interchangeably to describe the blessing of the Kehanim. One of them is called Birchas Kehanim, which refers to what's actually being done. The point of the service is the blessing, bracha. However, it's done in a form called Nesias Kapayim, where the hands are lifted. Nesias Kapayim means uplifted hands. Nesia means up, means lifted, and a Kapayim is the hands. So you call it Nesias Kapayim, uplifted hands. So those are two words. How do you know that the blessing has to be done b'Nesias Kapayim, with lifted hands? How do you know it's necessary? It says over here, this is how you bless them. It says that when Aaron blessed the congregation, he lifted up his hands. We say that just like that single event happened with his hands uplifted, we learn that anytime this event happens, i.e. Birchas Kehanim, the hands need to be lifted. Rabbi Yonason had a difficulty. If we're comparing it to that event was the event of Parsha Shmini, the consecration of the Mishkan, the tabernacle. if that scenario is a Kohen Gadol on Rosh Chodesh and Avodas Tzibur, so he's the Kohen Gadol, the date is Rosh Chodesh, and he's serving the congregation. This is part of the community service. So, for example, every day there was a korban tamid, right? A sacrifice in the morning, sacrifice in the evening. That's called a korban tzibur. It's actually purchased, like we saw previously, from the monies of machzah shekel, right? The half shekel coins, and it's a community service. However, if you brought your own sacrifice, or you're an individual kohen deciding to give your friend a blessing, that's not a community service. So how do you know that there's a birchas kehanim even as an individual? So in other words, why don't we say that just like in that scenario, it was Kohen Gadol on Rosh Chodesh and Avodas Tzibur, Afkan Kohen Gadol Rosh Chodesh Avodas Tzibur. Birchas kehanim should be limited to a Kohen Gadol performing the service of the congregation, the sacrificial service in the temple, and on Rosh Chodesh. Okay, the Gemara does not answer this question. The Gemara will get back to it, I think, in a moment. Rabbi Nosson says it's not necessary. One second. Yeah. Because we compare the service of Aaron at the consecration of the temple for his children forever. Just like what he did was b'nesiyas kapayim, so too his children forever also will do b'nesiyas kapayim. They'll raise their hands. It says forever, and we talk about service being forever. We compare that to the blessing, birchas kehanim being forever and being relevant to every kohen and it would be with lifting up his hands. Okay, Tanya Idach, another right says, Kaisavarchu es b'nei Yisrael b'shem mefarish. This is with the tetragrammaton, with the actual name. Or maybe it means usually like with a substitute name. Hamad Laimar, the verse states, V'samu es Shemi, place my name. Shmi Hamayuchadli, the known name, i.e., the capital T name, which is the tetragrammaton. Yachal af b'gvulan kain. I would think that also outside of the Beis Hamikdash, it should be the same way. Nemar kan v'samu es Shemi, v'nemar lahalon losam es Shemai Sham. 1 second. Yeah, it says that you'll place my name, and then it speaks of the temple that this is the place where my name will be placed. So we compare the two of them. In other words, when God speaks of placing his name in the temple, that's actually an exclusivity, and we compare that exclusivity to the component of birchas kehanim that requires God's name, the actual name, which requires you to speak out God's name only in the temple, exclusively in the temple. Malahal and Beis Bechira, Afkan Beis Bechira, just like when God said that specifically his name will be placed in the temple, that specific reference also refers to the specific reference of birchas kehanim. And in birchas kehanim, the specific name of God is only pronounced in the Beis Hamikdash. Rabbi Yashia Omer, ain't it tzarech? It's not necessary. Harei Omer b'chol makom asher asker shemi ave elecha. Any place where you pronounce my name, I will come and bless you. B'chol makom sagadayach, any place. Elam mikmer zeh mesurasu. This verse has to be written, a little bit chopped up, and this is how it's read. B'chol makom asher ave elecha ve'erachticha sham asker shemi. Any place where I will come and provide you with blessing, that's a place where you should mention my name. Where is the location where God will come and give us a blessing? In the temple. And therefore, Sham Asker Shemi, specifically in the Beis Hamikdash, that is where the God's name, tetragrammaton, should be pronounced. Okay, we'll stop here. Okay. Have a great day, and we'll see you hour before tomorrow. What time is that? I'm not. It's on the calendar. I'm outside. I'm not 100% sure.